Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're looking at Polestar. Polestar CEO Thomas Inglis on life after Volvo and weathering the EV slowdown. Polestar, now a more independent brand distinct from Volvo, is gearing up to deliver its most affordable cars yet. So I've got an article here from The Verge, a very interesting one in that they're discussing some really important thing with the CEO of Polestar regarding Polestar's new adventure, being more independent away from Volvo, but still relying on Volvo for R&D and many other areas that Volvo will still support Polestar in. So it's not a complete departure. Volvo and Polestar is still really close. They've got a really close partnership there, and it's not ending anytime soon. And I think this was the smartest thing that Polestar and Volvo could have ever done. It was always meant to be this way. Polestar was always meant to become more independent, and apparently this is the right time. And I can completely understand why, because since then, Polestar has been able to really confirm their $960 million in funding, and they're still looking for another $300 million or $350 million, and it looks very much possible. And this is to help the business continue growing, of course, to deliver more vehicles and get the Polestar 5, Polestar 6 on the road in the next 2 to 3 years. So The Verge talking with Polestar CEO Thomas Inglis, who was first interviewed on the show back in 2021. Those were heady days, especially for upstart EV companies like Polestar, which seemed poised to capture what felt like infinite demand for electric vehicles. Now in 2024, the market looks a little bit different, and so does Polestar, which is no longer majority owned by Volvo. Instead, Polestar is now a more independent sister company to Volvo, and both car makers under Chinese parent company Geely. And I must say, the way Geely is leading the Polestar company is brilliant. The way they're leading the Volvo company is also brilliant. Volvo's been terrific lately. They've had a terrific run of success lately. And I spoke about it on the channel. I made a video on Volvo quite recent in the last couple of weeks. And that was a fairly popular video amongst people watching, mostly because it spoke the truth that Volvo is actually developing rapidly fast and they could catch Audi, which is incredible. If you told someone 20 years ago that Volvo will be competing with Audi, no one would have believed you. Volvo is actually doing significantly better than competing with Audi because now they have a sister company known as Polestar. And Polestar is there to compete with Porsche and the likes of Audi, R8 and stuff like that. So Geely, Volvo, Polestar, they're attacking the electric vehicle market on all fronts, all different areas, all different angles. Not to mention, Lotus is also owned by Geely, and they have a few other brands as well that they're launching vehicles. So it's quite an exciting time. But let's get back to Thomas and let's get back to Polestar. So some of the questions that they were asking Thomas, such as what does it mean for Volvo to have stepped back, and how much can Polestar take from Geely various platforms while still remaining distinct from the other brands in the portfolio? Thomas has a refreshing, candid perspective on why people prefer certain car brands. He thinks desirability is the #1 factor for Polestar, and how the company think its relationship to Volvo and other luxury car makers and EV markets in general. So it looks like the first time Thomas had a sit down with the Verge group was looking at the Polestar only mainstream car, which is the Polestar 2, and it looks like they had a well review for that. So this year, Polestar expects to start delivering its Polestar 3 SUV to customers and the Polestar 4, the crossover electric coupe SUV. Now, this is quite an exciting time because for the last few years, Polestar has been known to be a one-car company. They've only been able to deliver one car. That's the Polestar 2. Rivian can deliver 2 cars. That's the SUV and the pickup truck. Tesla has been delivering multiple cars. NIO has been delivering multiple cars. Many of these EV brands have been delivering multiple cars. Polestar has been in an unfortunate situation where they've only had one car that's really ready for delivery. But this gave them a great amount of time to develop the Polestar 3 and Polestar 4 to a perfection level of quality and to be able to offer that to their customers. So essentially, Polestar is going from a 1-car brand to a 3-car brand this year, and that's quite exciting. And while it's a little bit delayed because this was supposed to start it late last year, they had to delay the Polestar 3, and it was a smart decision. Volvo also delayed the EX90, which is built on the same platform as the Polestar 3. I think this was a genius plan because at the end of the day, you want these cars to be perfect. You don't want to have any issues. You don't really want to have any serious recalls. If there are recalls, it should be able to be fixed with over-the-air software updates. You don't want to have any serious problem. You want these cars to be really, really spectacular. You want to offer customers the best that you can offer. And as for the Polestar 3, it really is the top of the range Polestar that you can afford. Vice versa for the Volvo EX90, these are really top brand cars. So this is Polestar filling out the lineup and hopefully competing with the intentions of more car shoppers. But in my opinion, it's competing with Porsche. That's who they're really targeting, and it's quite exciting because I've grown to really appreciate Porsches, and I was already a Polestar fan, but I've grown to appreciate Porsches. And my appreciation of Porsches all started with a Porsche concept car. It's not even a production car, it's just a concept car. It's the Mission R. It's like a racing electric car, and it's still a concept, it's still a prototype, but it looks fantastic, at least from the outside. The inside also looks fairly nice as well. And that's what got me into Porsches, if I'm being completely honest. From there, I started liking the more modern 911, I believe that's a 911 Sport, the most recent one on the market. I started liking the exterior and the interior and the colors they use, and I was like, wow, I've never looked at Porsche this way before. So it's quite exciting to see that. And it's quite exciting to see that Polestar is not backing down from a fight. They want to bring the Polestar 6 to the market to compete with the likes of the Porsche 911 and the Audi R8. Or rather, have the Polestar 5 being competing with the Porsche Taycan and the Audi e-tron sedan. All electric, by the way, all electric. Now that's going to be quite a spicy competition between all three of those cars. I swear, it's going to be a showdown. Now, Thomas doesn't see technology as a big opportunity, apparently. Polestar cars today run on Android Automotive OS in the partnership with Google. And in China, Polestar just partners with Xingji Meizu, another Geely company, to use a platform called Flim OS. You'll hear Thomas talk about the partnership and where Polestar is comfortable side-in control to Apple, Google, and others. So apparently they interviewed him, had him on the podcast. I've got to listen to that podcast. It's got to be quite exciting. And I'm quite surprised to see that Thomas would say that he doesn't see software as a big opportunity. This is quite a surprise because we're in the age of self-driving technology. We're also in the age of AI, and they go hand in hand, as you can see with the recent success of the likes of Tesla. Self-driving technology and AI goes well together. And what do you need for this? Software. Software has become a very important topic for electric vehicles. You can't have one without the other. So I'm afraid I'll have to disagree with what Thomas had to say here, because I believe strongly that software has everything to do with electric cars, and it's a huge opportunity right now, especially for the future development of R&D and research in self-driving vehicles and AI. But certainly, if it's not a big opportunity for Polestar, is it a big opportunity for Geely and for Volvo? Because they're the bigger brands. They're the ones who will be selling a lot more vehicles, close to 1 million. Polestar is targeting selling 2,500 vehicles, 300,000 vehicles. That's their target for the next 5, 6, 7 years, which is definitely honorable. It's definitely achievable, accomplishable. So it's something that I really believe in Polestar that they can accomplish. But further down the line, a decade, 2 decades, you mean to tell me that software is not a big opportunity for electric vehicles? No. I'd have to disagree. It has everything to do with electric vehicles, and for everyone who's not investing in it now, they're going to be sorry, and they're going to be desperately wanting this technology when it's perfected. So hopefully Volvo and Geely are working on this technology, because whatever happens, Polestar is also going to need a similar competitor. They're going to need this technology, because when Porsche has it, Audi has it, Mercedes and BMW has it. Is Polestar just going to be the odd one out that's not focusing on software and technology? And given that the Polestar cars are so incredibly good looking, you would think that technology would be a huge priority for them. You'd think that software would be a huge priority for them. So I'm quite surprised to see that it's the opposite. I'm quite surprised, but hopefully once I listen to the interview, this will be explained a little bit better. So of course, Thomas is a designer at heart, and The Verge have asked him about the recent trends in car design, including the retro-futuristic shift that we're seeing from companies like Rivian. And by the way, off the record, no, actually, it doesn't have to be off the record. On the record, I love the Rivian recent designs. The Rivian R2, R3, and R3X especially. These retro-futuristic design are absolutely incredible. And is perhaps reviving something that we really need to revive, because this happens. Things go out of fashion, then they come back. Do you remember like 2, 3 years ago when Apple started building their MacBooks with the old designed, but they modernized the old design? Instead of having those sharp edges that felt like thick paper, it has those smooth edges now. Now, you see, that's taking something from the past, but modernizing it and bringing it forward into the future with a more modern version that people will approve of. And I love that device, by the way. Can't imagine anything else. So apparently, The Verge says that Thomas has one of the best response to this question to the Cybertruck in specific that they've heard from anyone in the industry. Okay, Polestar CEO Thomas Inglis, here we go. So apparently, this transcript has been edited for length and clarity. So the full interview is perhaps available on the Verge article. So you'd have to check that out for yourself. But to paraphrase, this is some of what he was saying. And I quote, "I'm very excited to talk to you again, your first conversation with us." So Thomas had to say, and I quote, "Well, it's still a relationship. It's still a family. You can do whatever you want. Once you're a family, you're a family. But you grow up and you move out and you become more independent. That happens in family. There are periods of bigger distance, periods when you find each other again. Having said that, compared to how 2021 was laid out as planned, it's really not much of a change. Let's face it, the cars, for example, that are testimony to that of growing up were in development at the point in time from a very early Polestar 1, even the Polestar 2, when still had a close relationship with Volvo, to the Polestar 3 and Polestar 4. When we were growing more into an independent company, it was part of the long-term plan. But I'd love to point out that it was not visible in 2021, and maybe it's really different from when we find ourselves now in 2024. One element that have been a talking point about a lot is much innovation, speed, relevant electric mobility, relevant technology has accelerated momentum and dynamics within the Geely group in other brands where it's relevant for us to broaden our way of using the brand technology portfolio and hook up and do things on a broader range within the Geely group. So I think it's reflecting what's happening in the world. Let's face it, China EVs did not become competitive or a threat to OEMs of the world because of subsidiaries. I really and truly agree with what Thomas just said. China EVs did not become competitive or a threat to OEMs because of subsidiaries. I spoke about this recently in my Neo video. It was a really interesting point and everyone understood well what I was trying to say. We're not going to go into that right now. I want to stay on topic. Thomas continued to say, they are technically competitive, highly competitive. This is what makes them a threat. We should be a little bit more honest about it, and that for the reason. The advantage for us to hook up that technology as European OEMs, I mean, Polestar is here in Sweden, and it's a very European company. And I know why he mentioned that, because often Polestar gets criticized for being a Chinese company, as if there's something wrong with that. I really don't understand the criticism towards China. We rely on them for everything that we have in our home. Without them, the world would be so much more expensive because of manufacturing costs. We live in a very different world, so I'm not going to get into that, like I said. Thomas went on to say, we're harvesting and using this technology as well as going forward. Volvo is reducing its ownership, but the 18% stake that they keep certainly is beyond whatever you would call a strategic partnership. That's heavy involvement. That is a strong ownership still. And the relationship that we have in terms of producing cars together, developing technology together, is untouched for reasons. Any investors talking about Polestar always try to separate that. One thing is that the ownership structure, the other thing is that the technology and where we produce cars, that is different. We're on track to be more a global company manufacturing footprint wise. He is completely right once again, and I've always said this 18% stake that Volvo has retained in Polestar, it is not as small as people think. It is actually still a huge strategic partnership and relationship that they have together. Volvo is not supporting them financially anymore because Volvo doesn't have to. Polestar can gain external support and external funding with very little risk. And if they go into debt, guess what? Geely and Volvo is there to bail them out in case of an emergency. In fact, Geely is there. Volvo can just focus on being Volvo, and Volvo is doing so amazingly well. I don't want Volvo to be distracted. It's time Polestar becomes more independent, and this is why they've made such a brilliant decision. So as far as Volvo and Polestar relationship goes, they still work with each other very closely in R&D, sales, and aftermarket. The list goes on. Thomas went on to say, all of this is much more on the move. We will gain with this reduction of ownership of Volvo from around 48% to 18%, something in the long run very beneficial for Polestar, and that it's to increase our free float. That was almost a promise when we listed the company, that the main owners would eventually actually let go of some of the ownership in order to increase the free float and to let other people participate in it. That's my point. Get other investors to participate in it. Polestar can get other investments. They're a well-renowned brand right now. People are actually really loving their cars. They don't have a problem getting more investments. And with Volvo reducing the ownership, this is the perfect strategic move. I've explained this in length. If you'd like my explanation on that, let me know in the comments and I'll send you a clip. I'll send you a link to my videos explaining this strategic decision between Volvo and Polestar. So to be honest, there's a lot that the CEO has said, and it is a lot. But one thing I do want to touch on is that he said, and I quote, there's technology that we use, for example, where building the Polestar 4 on technology that is coming from Geely Group. There are elements like electronic architecture where we definitely can harvest things that are developed in the Geely Group and that we can take as a starting point. For example, the Polestar 5 to then develop the electric architecture on the Polestar 5 on this basis. He also said that the windowless virtual rear window Polestar 4, it's the first product where I think it becomes very tangible on how technology is very good base for us to develop an amazing Polestar product on its interesting for consumers. Thomas Ingeloff also said he worked in Volkswagen for a very long time, for over 2 decades. He was within the Volkswagen Group when a lot of brands were bought, and it took, I call it now, German relationalism, this idea that you want to put it in all box. There's a big effort to structure it, and to a high degree it has been structured. There's a very clear brand and mission. He worked for the Volkswagen Group, and now his brand is competing against the Volkswagen Group, such as Porsche, Audi, and the list goes on. Now that's spectacular. In fact, he mentions Audi and Porsche right here. Just came across it. Let's see what he says. You could see it between Audi and Porsche. So even if you try that, there will still be some kind of friction happening. So what is he referring to? He's referring to when you have two companies that are almost competitors and they're owned by the same brand, like Porsche and Audi. They're owned by Volkswagen. Well, actually, they're owned by Porsche, which is owned by Volkswagen, which is owned by Porsche. It's a really conflicting story, but there is a lot to go in here, a lot of transcript. So here's something that he does mention, and I think this might be an important point. And let me say, so the CEO had to say, and I quote, all the stuff, if we would have it at Volvo, would have told me, and I quote, oh, that's too German, too techy, it's too cold to do that in a techy way. That's why I feel we position these two brands peacefully next to each other. I've had very clear statement recently. Polestar 3 parked next to the Volvo EX90. Both cars are very much on the same wheelbase and same technology starting point, but they are so different in what they offer to consumers and customers. I've said this in my videos. If you don't believe me, rewatch my videos. I've said this in my videos. These cars are built on the same platform, yet they look very different and they offer something very different to customers. I've said this. I swear, I'm not getting insider information. I'm really just I'm reading in between the lines, and I'm happy to see that my analysis are correct. The CEO's confirming what I've said previously in my videos. Thank you, Thomas Ingeloff, for clearing the air, for making it clear. Even though these cars are built on the same technology, they might be similar in the fact that they're huge SUVs. They're very different at the same time, and that's brilliant. He also says, I mean, if you don't see and get the difference between Polestar and Volvo looking at these two products, then I can't help you. I think we're very much a healthy ground when it comes to the brand differentiation. Brilliant. Brilliant. If you can't see the difference between the EX90 and the Polestar 3, we cannot help you. And I hate it when people say, oh, the Polestar 4 looks like a Tesla. No, it doesn't. Those are the same people who would basically say, oh, that Lamborghini looks like a Ferrari. There is no Lamborghini that looks like a Ferrari, and there's no Ferrari that looks like a Lamborghini. But there are people out there who would say that. They would say something so silly. So I'm just saying. But wow, this transcript is incredibly long. There's a lot of things to go through. Some things I already knew, But if there's something specific that you would like me to talk about, something specific that you would like me to speak on, I would be happy to speak on that subject. But there is a lot to go through. If I keep going through all of this video is going to be at least an hour long. And that's not what we're trying to do. In fact, the final information that I'm really trying to find is that final question that they asked them. That's where we started. But what he does say is, and I'd love to quote him. Thomas said, and I quote, "It's a different ambition if you want to sell 1 million cars. When you actually put out the goal of selling 20 million cars in a year, then you have a very aggressive in your pricing and you have to be very aggressive in gaining market shares there. But that's completely different target, a different game. That's not what Polestar is targeting, and I'm so happy that they're not targeting that number." So, well, of course, Tesla started a completely different end. I mean, they had a car for 100,000 out there. That's true. The Model S, Model X, the Model X is well known for being Tesla's $100,000 car for a very long time. But in more recent years, the price has been lowering because of subsidies and discounts and, the price war and stuff like that. But also, Tesla proved that people are willing to buy electric vehicles that are not cheap. There's definitely a market for it, and that market is only just beginning. And the more you keep developing this technology, making it better for customers to use, the more they're willing to buy your vehicle and participate in your brand. And it's one thing I know about Volvo customers is that they're very brand loyal. They're extremely brand loyal. If they buy a Volvo, they'll most likely buy another Volvo and another one and another one and another one, and it'd be a family thing. And especially now when Volvos are actually designing cars that are actually very appealing to the younger audience. Yeah, Volvo is in the sweet spot right now, and I've made a video on this. They're literally in the sweet spot right now, and they are doing terrifically well. And like I said, it is incredible to think that Volvo is now targeting Audi. 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 I've said that too many times. They're targeting Audi, and Polestar is targeting Porsche. So in this family of cars, Geely is Volkswagen, so that's quite exciting in itself. But my goodness, this article and these transcripts are incredibly long. And there's some more exciting things to go through. And perhaps I have to go through the rest of this on another video. I really have to go through the rest of this on another video. Let me know if you want a part 2 to this video. Do you want me to go through the rest of the information Thomas has been talking about? And he's touched on some great topics, so I'd like to go through it a bit more. Wait a minute, here's the final question. The interviewers basically said, "We're interested to sort out the retro future moment. That's Hyundai, Kia, and for sure also Rivian R3 design, Rivian R3X in particular, very retro futuristic, very organic." The Polestar CEO says, and I quote, "It's the way it goes. It's history taking place. Car design is developing. It's according to society stream. It's always a reflection of what's happening in culture, in society. I see that very well, and I actually applaud it. I'm happy that we are out here with super aggressive periods, and then again, it's of course a reflection of the period the world is in. The danger I see is that instead of developing a new expression and new formative elements, that you are reflecting too much on what has happened in the past, that it's tricky for making now the transition onto, come on, yes, we cherish certain historical value and great design. How do you drive into the future? How do you make it a modern trend and not just a retro trend?" And I definitely don't think it's a retro trend. I definitely think there's a lot of new cars with new designs for sure. But ain't nothing wrong with a little bit of retro, going, taking something back from the past and improving it. And that always happens in history, in everything, even fashion, especially fashion. That happens all the time in fashion. They take things from the past and they improve it to modernize it. And it's happening now with electric vehicles. So it's nothing that is it's nothing new. It is nothing new. It is expected and it's quite exciting. The CEO also went on to say but it's good. It's great creativity out there. It's fun again to actually go whatever car is going on and see what's happening there. It's obvious that there's a certain, I call it, on security, on testing new grounds and trying new things. You see how, for example, BMW is putting out a study on what their future direction could look like. But it's great that the company feels the need and the necessity to define and open the new approach and actually enter it, partly to make a story easier because certain elements that have been promoted in some years ago obviously find recognition, and that makes it for consumers and customers choosing our cars kind of confirmation that the style we're promoting actually is what is leading the future. He makes it very simple to understand this. His point is very clear. So on one hand, he does like it. On the other hand, he's a bit reserved to see if it becomes too much. Hopefully it doesn't become too much, but a little bit of retro is quite nice. This is where I'll end this video. It's a lot to go through, but I'm willing to